Srimad-Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 7, Text 36. The Lord himself, in his incarnation as the son of Satyavati, Vyasadeva, will consider his compilation of the Vedic literature to be very difficult for the less intelligent persons with short life. And thus he will divide the tree of Vedic knowledge into different branches, according to the circumstances of the particular age. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Herein, Brahma mentions the future compilation of Srimad-Bhagavatam for the short-lived persons of the Kali age. As explained in the first canto, the less intelligent persons of the age of Kali would not only be short-lived, but also perplexed with so many problems of life due to the awkward situation of the godless human society. Advancement of material comforts of the body is activity in the mode of ignorance, according to the laws of material nature. Real advancement of knowledge means progress of knowledge in self-realization. But in the age of Kali, the less intelligent men mistakenly consider the short lifetime of 100 years, and now factually reduced to about 40 or 60 years, to be all in all. They are less intelligent because they have no information of the eternity of life. They identify with the temporary material body existing for 40 years and consider it the only basic principle of life. Such persons are described as equal to the asses and bulls. But the Lord, as the compassionate Father of all living beings, imparts unto them the vast Vedic knowledge in short treatises like Bhagavad Gita, and for the graduates, the Srimad-Bhagavatam. The Puranas and the Mahabharata are also similarly made by Vyasadeva for the different types of men in the modes of material nature, but none of them are independent of the Vedic principles. I wanted to explain a little bit about our dedication to Vyasadeva. We've actually dedicated our life to studying Srila Vyasadeva's books and sharing them with others. So the question arises, why? Why this book? Or this person's writing? Why is it so important that you would dedicate your life to it? And again, we're back to the concept that we just spoke about a minute ago. It's part of a science. It's the science of life. It's the science of understanding God. It's described in this verse that the Lord himself incarnates to write these books. Vyasadeva is an incarnation of God, and he's writing specific information for people of this age. So it's pertinent information. Samapriya and I have been discussing priorities. Everyone has their daily activities, whatever we do in life. But if you consider the priorities of the vast majority of people all over the world, it's usually their family, their job, and enjoying. This is how people spend and prioritize their activities. But Srila Prabhupada, following the parampara, especially Rupa Goswami's Nectar of Devotion, there's a list of 5 priorities everyone should make in their life. 5 most important activities. 1, first and foremost, daily, chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. And second, read Srimad-Bhagavatam daily. The sound vibrations of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra and the chant and the hearing of Srimad-Bhagavatam nourish the soul. They transform one's life. Worshipping the deities, associating with devotees, and visiting holy places, or going to places where the Lord performed his pastimes, are the other priorities one should make in his life. And I know that there are some people who don't have this priority, so I just wanted to bring it up as an emphasis. If you really want to understand the science of God and mature in this science, these are essential. So Samapriya, you want to take over and go to the next verse?
Okay, I'd like to just add one more point on that. Living in a holy dham, wherever devotional service is being performed, is considered to be a holy Dham. Oh my God. Sorry. That's fine. Anyway, I wanted to make that straight so people will not become disturbed, because there is even a Dham in the heart. So where devotional service is being performed, it's a sacred place, and that becomes a holy Dham because of the activities of devotional service. Okay, now we'd like to start with Isap and Vaishnav. I don't know if Vaishnavi is hearing me. Are you hearing me, Vaishnavi? Anyway, we'll do Madhurya Leela.
Yeah, I'm hearing you.
Okay, sweetie, you read after Isap. Okay, thank you.
I read little like 20 minutes later.
Okay. Madhurya Leela, are you there? Okay, she's not.
I'm here, but I can't read right now.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Tisha, you're on after Isap.
Srimad-Bhagavatam 2.7.37. When the atheists, after being well versed in the Vedic scientific knowledge, annihilate inhabitants of different planets, flying unseen in the sky on well-built rockets prepared by the great scientist Maya, the Lord will bewilder their minds by dressing himself attractively as Buddha and will preach on sub-religious principles. Purport. This incarnation of Lord Buddha is not the same Buddha incarnation we have in the present history of mankind. According to Srila Jiva Goswami, the Buddha incarnation mentioned in this verse appeared in a different Kali age. In the duration of life of one Manu, there are more than 72 Kali Yugas, and in one of them, the particular type of Buddha mentioned here would appear. Lord Buddha incarnates at a time when the people are most materialistic and preaches common sense religious principles. Such a time when the people such a time, ahimsa is not a religious principle in itself. Okay. But it is an important quality for persons who are actually religious. It is a common sense religion because one is advised to do no harm to any other animal or living being, because such harmful actions are equally harmful to he who does the harm. But before learning these principles of nonviolence, one has to learn two other principles, namely to be humble and to be prideless. Unless one is humble and prideless, one cannot be harmless and nonviolent. And after being nonviolent, one has to learn tolerance and simplicity of living. One must offer respects to the great religious preachers and spiritual leaders, and also train the senses for controlled action. Learning to be unattached to family and home, and enacting devotional service to the Lord, etc. At the ultimate stage, one has to accept the Lord and become his devotee. Otherwise, there is no religion. In religious principles, there must be God in the center. Otherwise, simple moral instructions are merely sub-religious principles, generally known as upadama or nearness to religious principles.
Okay, that's a very, there were people who had questions about the second Buddha. There, we are in a teeny weeny point. Anybody who has studied astrology can understand, not astrology, algebra. We are a teeny weeny point in the universe we're living here. And we are taking everything so seriously that everything doesn't fit together perfectly according to our material plans. So all that can be ignored, and get down to the real business at hand, which is to get out of the material world. This other Buddha is just an indication of how massive the creation of God is. And he comes infinite amount of time, so infinite amount of universes, and here we are, a teeny little selves. So let's get it together and chant Hare Krishna and go back to Godhead. That's what I got from that. Okay, so Faye, would you read after that? Oh wait, Tisha, you're reading, and then Faye. Thank you.
Okay. Srimad-Bhagavatam 2:7, verse 38. Thereafter, at the end of Kali Yuga, when there exists no topics on the subject of God, even at the residences of so-called saints and respectable gentlemen of the three higher castes, and when the power of government is transferred to the hands of ministers elected from the low-born Sudra class or those less than them, and when nothing is known of the techniques of sacrifice, even by word, at that time the Lord will appear as the supreme chastiser. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The symptoms of the worst conditions of the material world at the last stage of this age, called Kali Yuga, are stated herein. The sum and substance of such conditions is godlessness. Even the so-called saints and higher castes of the social orders, generally known as the Dvijajanas, or the twice-born, will become atheists. The saints and the higher castes or orders of the society are judged by their proportion of knowledge in the science of God, or Tattvajnana, and not by any kind of birthright or bodily designations. Such designations, without any knowledge of the science of God and practical knowledge of devotional service, are considered to be all decorations of dead bodies. And when there is too much inflation of these decorated dead bodies in society, there develop so many anomalies in the progressive, peaceful life of the human being. Animal birth and progress of life on the animal principles of eating, sleeping, fearing, and mating, without any scientific culture of spiritual life, is called the Sudra life, or, to be more explicit, the uncultured life of the lower class of men. It is stated herein that the governmental power of society in the Kali Yuga will be passed over to the uncultured, godless laborer class of men, and thus the Nirdevas, or the ministers of the government, will be the Vrshalas, or the uncultured, lower class men of society. In the degraded condition of human society, the Lord incarnates as the Kalki avatar and kills all the demonic without mercy.
In the Vedic literatures, it describes these 4 yugas, and it describes that Kali Yuga will last 432,000 years, of which we've only passed 5,000 years. But yet these descriptions of low-class people being in administrative posts in government is already manifesting. It's causing so much havoc in the world. So we can see, or we can consider with our intelligence, how much more degraded this world is going to become in 427,000 more years. It's going to become so hellish. So in one nice lecture, Srila Prabhupada describes that because we know this, it's time to get serious about chanting Hare Krishna, worshiping the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and going back to Godhead, because coming back here will not be a nice circumstance at all.
Okay, so to add to that also, achieving the goal of human life is way down on the agenda for these people in Kali Yuga who are completely in the bodily concept and fighting for the bodily rights and totally absorbed in the external energy. And that could be very confusing for the people in general, unless we hear from a pure devotee and take what he's saying seriously. Thank you. So Faye, you want to read next, and then Bhadra?
Srimad-Bhagavatam 2.7.39. At the beginning of creation, there are penance, myself, Brahma, and the Prajapatis, the great sages who generate. Then, during the maintenance of creation, there are Lord Vishnu, the demigods with controlling powers, and the kings of different planets. But at the end, there is irreligion, and then Lord Shiva and the atheist full of anger, etc. All of them are different representative manifestations of the energy of the supreme power, the Lord. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The material world is created by the energy of the Lord, which is manifested in the beginning of creation by the penance of Brahmaji, the first living being in the creation. And then there are the 9 Prajapatis known as the great sages. In the stage where the creation is maintained, there are devotional service to Lord Vishnu or factual religion, the different demigods and the kings of different planets who are to maintain the world. At last, when the creation is preparing to wind up, there is first the principle of irreligion, then Lord Shiva along with the atheist full of anger, but all of them are but different manifestations of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, Brahma, Vishnu, and Mahadeva Siva are different incarnations of the different modes of material nature. Vishnu is the Lord of the mode of goodness. Brahma is the Lord of the mode of passion, and Shiva is the Lord of the mode of ignorance. Ultimately, the material creation is but a temporary manifestation meant to give the chance of liberation to the conditioned souls who are entrapped in the material world. And one who develops the mode of goodness under the protection of Lord Vishnu has the greatest chance of being liberated by following the Vaishnava principles and thus being promoted to the kingdom of God, no more to return to this miserable material world.
Thank you, Faye. So I would like to suggest, if people would like to get a pen and paper while we are reading these purports, what we're trying to do here generally is to help and encourage everyone to deeply read Srila Prabhupada's purports. So while someone is reading, really hear and follow along. And if there's something that comes up in your mind that this is an important point, you could write it down, you can express it at the end, or you can just have it for yourself to know. This is a really good practice, and I've begun to do this. So in this purport, the mention of penance, and before we were discussing how the low-class man will take over the government, and there is no conception of penance. Of course, Prabhupada said, and we see that for anything that you want to achieve in this world, you have to work hard. So that could be considered penance. So penance is the foundation of the universe. That's what the whole thing started with, the penance of Lord Brahma. And another interesting point that I picked up was that atheists, the atheism will come before all creation is destroyed. So we can see generally in the world today that because of atheism, things are gradually being destroyed. The creation is being destroyed. Communication, the higher goals of life are being covered. Faye, did you want to say something real briefly about that? Because you read the purport and you're a deep thinker, I know.
May I see the screen, Vaishnavi?
Okay, Pati, do you want to put on the screen for a
text?
sec?
Um,
Yeah.
I like to particularly look at that last sentence or so. Ultimately, the material creation is but a temporary manifestation meant to give the chance of liberation to the conditioned souls. I especially like the use of the word entrapped, because that sure describes a lot of how stuck we are. And even in the mode of goodness, we've got to pay attention to those principles. We've got to follow through on this. And I really love those last few words. No more to return, yay, to this miserable world.
Great. Thank you. Very good. Thank you,
Welcome.
Faye. Baja, would you like to read on and then Manvantara after him?
Hare Krishna, Dandavad. The text 40. Who can describe completely the powers of Vishnu? Even the scientists who might have counted the particles of the atoms of the universe cannot do so, because it is he only who, in his form of Trivikram, moved his leg effortlessly beyond the topmost planet, Satyaloka, up to the neutral state of the three modes of material nature, and all were moved. Purport. The highest scientific advancement of the material scientist is atomic energy. But the material scientist is not able to have an estimation of the particles of atoms contained in the whole universe. But even if one is able to count such atomic particles, or is able to roll up the sky like one's bedding, even then, one is unable to estimate the extent of the powers and energy of the Supreme Lord. He is known as Trivikram because once in his incarnation as of Vamana, he expanded his leg beyond the highest planetary system, Satyaloka, and reached the neutral state of the modes of nature called the covering of the material world. There are 7 layers of material coverings over the material sky, and the Lord could penetrate even those coverings. With his toe, he made a hole through which the water of the causal ocean filters into material sky, and the current is known as sacred Ganges, which purifies the planets of the three worlds. In other words, no one can be equal to transcendental powerful Vishnu. He is omnipotent, and no one is equal or greater than him.
Thank you. Did anybody write down something or had something to that stuck up in their minds from this purport? No? Okay, I'm just going to tell one quick one, then we're going to move on quick. If we think of the Lord lifting his toe and making a hole in the universe, that's one concept of life. And then we think of our little difficulties that we're going through. So we should put everything in the proper perspective, folks, isn't it? We think that we're going through things in this material world that are so devastating. This is, we shouldn't pay so much importance to it. When I see something like that, it gives me great faith and hope. So to push on in my spiritual life and not pay so much attention to the everyday nitpicking little things that we go through. And I'm very learned in those little nitpicky things. That's why I have so much experience and I can understand this is not the way to go. Okay, so next, Manvatara, would you read please? And then Akadasi. And thank you, Bajra.
Neither, neither I nor all the sages born before you know fully the omnipotent personality of Godhead. So what can others who are born after us know about him? Even the first incarnation of the Lord, namely Sesha, has not been able to reach the limit of such knowledge, although he's describing the qualities of the Lord with 1,000 faces. The omnipotent personality of Godhead has three primary potencies, namely the internal, external, and the marginal potencies, with unlimited expansions of these three energies. As such, the expansions of his potencies can never be calculated by anyone, because even the personality of God himself, as the incarnation of Sesha, cannot estimate the potencies, although he has been describing them continuously with his 1,000 faces.
Do you want to read the next one, Mambantara?
Sure. But anyone who is specifically favored by the Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead, due to unalloyed surrender unto the services of the Lord, can overcome the insurmountable ocean of illusion and can understand the Lord. But those who are attached to this body, which is meant to be eaten by the end by dogs and jackals, cannot do so. The unallowed devotees of the Lord know the glories of the Lord in the sense that they can understand how great the Lord is and how great is his expansion of diverse energy. Those who are attached to the perishable body can hardly enter into the realm of the science of Godhead. The whole materialistic world, based on the conception of the material body as a self, is ignorant of the science of God. The materialist is always busy working for the welfare of the material body, not only his body, not only his own, but also those of his children, kinsmen, community men, countrymen, etc. The materialists have many branches of philanthropic and altruistic activities from a political, national, and international angle of vision, but none of the field work can go beyond the jurisdiction of the misconception of identifying the material body with the spirit soul. Unless, therefore, one is saved from the wrong conception of the body and the soul, there is no knowledge of Godhead. And unless there is knowledge of God, all advancement of material civilization, however dazzling, should be considered a failure.
Okay. I just have one question. Don't change it. Could you put it back, Pati? And this wonderful sentence: the whole materialistic world, based on the conception of the material body as a self, is ignorant of the science of God. Now that pretty much sums it up there. What do you think about that, Manvantara? Can you just say one statement about that?
Right. So, as it talked about earlier, we're not the body; we are spirit souls. And I was listening to a lecture by Prabhupada. It talked about how everything is actually spiritual, and when we interact with those things, even though we see it as material, it becomes spiritual because we use it in Krishna's service. So to become cognizant of the fact that to see things from the viewpoint that we are spirit souls and to act in that consciousness will take us out of the material realm.
Wonderful. Thank you. That was beautiful. Okay, let's go on with Vaishnavi. Can you read Vaishnavi and then Akadasi Vrat?
Yeah. So, O Narada, although the potencies of Lord are unknowable and immeasurable, still, because we are all surrendered souls, we know how he acts through the Yoga Maya potencies. And similarly, the potencies of the Lord are also known to all the powerful Shiva, the great king of the atheist family, namely Prahlad Maharaj, Swayambhu Manu, his wife Shatarupa, his sons and daughters like Priyavrata, Uttanapada, Akhuti, Devahuti, Prasuti, Prachina Bharhi, Ribhu, Anga, the father of Vena, Maharaj Dhruva, Ikshwaku, Aila, Muchukunda, Maharaj Janaka, Gadhi, Raghu, Ambarish, Sagara, Gaya, Nahusha, Mandhata, Alarka, Shatadhanve, Anu, Rantideva, Bhishma, Bali, Amurtharaya, Dilipa, Saurabhi, Utanka, Shibhi, Devala, Pipalada, Saraswata, Uddhava, Parashara, Bhurishena, Vibhishana, Hanuman, Shukadeva Goswami, Arjuna, Arshthishena, Vidura, Shrutadeva, etc. Purport. All the great devotees of Lord, as mentioned above, who flourished in the past and present, and all the devotees of Lord who will come in the future, are aware of the different potencies of the Lord, along with the potency of his name, quality, pastimes, entourage, personality, etc. And how do we know? Certainly, it is not by mental speculation, nor by any attempt by dint of limited instruments of knowledge. The sane person, therefore, ceases to speculate on subjects beyond the jurisdiction of his tiny brain, and as a matter of course, he tries to learn to surrender unto Supreme Lord, who alone can lead one to the platform of real knowledge. 1 minute, let me admit. In the Upanishads, it is clearly said that the Supreme Personality of Godhead can never be known simply by working very hard and taxing the good brain, nor can he be known simply by mental speculation or jugglery of words. The Lord is knowable only by one who is surrendered soul. Herein Brahmaji, the greatest of all material living beings, acknowledges this truth. Therefore, the fruitless spoiling of energy by pursuing the path of experimental knowledge must be given up. One should gain knowledge by surrendering unto the Lord and by acknowledging the authority of the persons mentioned herein. The Lord is unlimited, and by grace of Yoga Maya helps the surrendered soul to know him proportionately with the advance of one's surrender.
Okay. Very nice. What do you think about that last line?
Proportionately with the advance of one's surrender. So the more we surrender, more we know about him, meaning we actually gain knowledge about him. So knowledge, it is said in Bhagavatam in first canto, 5th chapter, somewhere, I don't remember, some 34 or 36, 38 shloka, that whatever we do as bhakti, then proportionately to that, we gain concomitant factor. What we gain out of that is knowledge and renunciation. So,
Very good. Yeah, thank you. And so the surrendered, this is the process. This is the thing. Surrendering to the Lord is the only way. And we surrender. And what is that surrender?
surrender is something what we take up the process and listen to the Guru and follow his instructions.
Okay.
And
Good.
One point I'd like to make out here and point out is Lord Brahma's transition now. Note how he's described the Leela avatars, and now he's glorifying the Lord, but he's also explaining that there are those who know the Lord, even though he's so unknowable. So what he's doing is he's like setting up something that's to come in the future. What he's going to describe to Narada is how he received this knowledge directly from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So just like Vaishnavi just pointed out, surrender doesn't mean to try to experiment and work on something to try and figure it out, which is what the modern people do to try and figure out how to deal with problems of life. It's actually to find a bona fide representative in this line of knowledge and surrender unto the method and the processes by which he or she has learned from their spiritual master. So I just wanted to point out, note the transition that Brahma is presenting here.
And another thing, just that figure out, that's a good thing. Figure out who to hear from. That's what we have to figure out. We have to figure out who to hear from. And by reading the Bhagavad Gita, we know the qualifications of who to hear from. Once you know the qualifications of who to hear from, and you actually surrender to those instructions, as Vaishnavi pointed out, then you're on the way. You're on the way back to Godhead. So Ekadasi, would you please read? And then Ian after Ekadasi.
2746. Surrendered souls, even from groups leading sinful lives, such as women, the laborer class, the mountaineers, and the Siberians, or even the birds and beasts, can also know about the science of Godhead and become liberated from the clutches of the illusory energy by surrendering unto the pure devotees of the Lord and by following in their footsteps in devotional service. Report. Sometimes there are inquiries as to how one can surrender unto the Supreme Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita 1866, the Lord asked Arjuna to surrender unto him, and therefore persons unwilling to do so question where God is and to whom they should surrender. The answer to such questions or inquiries is given herein very properly. The personality of Godhead may not be present before one's eye, but if one is sincere in wanting such guidance, the Lord will send a bona fide person who can guide one properly back home, back to Godhead. There is no need of material qualifications for making progress on the path of spiritual realization. In the material world, when one accepts some particular type of service, he is required to possess some particular type of qualification also. Without this, one is unfit for such service. But in the devotional service of the Lord, the only qualification required is surrender. Surrendering oneself is in one's own hand.
Thank you. Do you have something?
Actually, I'd like to hear Ekadasi Vrat's explanation of this particular point being made here, that in the material world, when one accepts a particular type of service, he's required to possess some particular type of qualification also. Without this, one is unfit for such service. But in devotional service, the only qualification required is surrender. So speak just a second for that on that, Ekadasi.
Yeah, I was just thinking actually how the main thing is to be sincere and in the process of surrendering, to just really want to do the best that we can and try to please Krishna. And that's really everything, because even in that process, if we make mistakes or we do the wrong thing, it's still good, because if we're sincere, then Krishna will make the qualification for us. So then it's fine.
Another thing to add to that is that the spiritual master is so expert. He knows how to engage each different disciple according to their capabilities and natures and ability to accept challenges. So we can understand we will not be, Krishna gives us just about as much as we can handle sometimes. We can do most of what Krishna is putting before us. The thing is to be able to understand what that really is.
One point historically in Vedic culture that's unique to this particular point, that Srila Prabhupada was a rebel and a forerunner in this concept, is that even people who, this verse was pointing out that even Siberians, women, lower class people outside the Vedic culture can still attain the mercy of the Lord. For those of us who were in India, especially during the time of Srila Prabhupada, Indian Vedic culture had not spread around the world the way it is now. There weren't people coming from all over the different countries, and Russians and so many different countries flooding the holy Dham. There was only a few. And the people who had been following Vedic culture very caste conscious due to the culture of Vaishnavism prior to Srila Prabhupada's bringing this to the West. It was very different. It truly was. And people wouldn't even eat. Even his godbrothers, Srila Prabhupada's own godbrothers, who have the same philosophy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, wouldn't eat something cooked by one of the, and offered to the Lord by the devotees in the Krishna consciousness movement, because they were malachas, they were yavanas, they were outside these bounds of religious principles. So it's an important point, unique to Srila Prabhupada, to show how great he was in understanding this particular feature that's being described.
This morning's class, Pushkar Prabhu was saying Gaur Keshava Prabhu, who's has become a Brahmin. He's actually been accepted by the Vallabha Sampradaya down in South India, and he has access to everything there. He lives 6 months out of the year there, and when they were down there, they actually stayed with the head priest in their house. So
Wow.
they accepted him as a Brahmin, even though he's a Western body. I was also going to say at the beginning of the movement, Prabhupada, everybody was young in their late teens or early 20s, and nobody really knew. They didn't have any qualifications. So, but Prabhupada had them do the service, and they became expert by surrendering and following Prabhupada's instructions.
Wonderful
Thank
point.
you. Ian, would you read next, and then Madhurya Leela, and then Gopa after Madhurya Leela? But there is a background sound there, Ian, that I'm hearing. If you could try to lessen that.
It's not near me. It's not near me.
No, we're not hearing you well at all.
Can you hear now?
Yeah,
No.
try. Well, let him try
Okay.
to read. Try to read and put your.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, is it better now?
A little bit.
Okay. What is realized as the absolute Brahman is full of unlimited bliss without grief. That is certainly the ultimate phase of the supreme enjoyer, the personality of Godhead. He is eternally void of all disturbances and is fearless. He is complete consciousness as opposed to matter, uncontaminated and without distinctions. He is the principal primeval cause of all causes and effects, in whom there is no sacrifice for fruitful activities, and in whom the illusory energy does not stand. Purport. Pratibodha Matram is just the opposite conception of material existence. In matter, there are material miseries, and thus, in the first realization of Brahman, there is the negation of such material miseries, and there is a feeling of eternal existence distinct from the pangs of birth and death, disease and old age. That is the primary conception of impersonal Brahman. The Supreme Lord is Supreme Soul of everything, and therefore in the Supreme conception, affection is realized. The conception of affection is due to the relationship of soul to soul. The father is affectionate to his son because there is some relationship of nearness between the son and the father. But that sort of affection in the material world is full of limitations. When the personality of God is met, the fullness of affection becomes manifested because of the reality of the affectionate relationship. He is not the object of affection by material tinges of body and mind, but he is the full, naked, and contaminated object of affection for all living entities, because he is the super soul or Paramatma within everyone's heart. In the liberated state of affairs, the full-fledged affection for the Lord is awakened.
This verse is extremely important. It is actually the foundation of personalism. This is because Prabhupada throughout this whole throughout the Bhagavatam, mainly in this chapter, I see is he's defeating impersonalism, and this talks about relationships, the relationship of the Lord with all the living entities, a very intimate relationship. It's a very, very important purport Can you, let me just ask Ian one thing, if you can just say something about this and about relationships in relation to God, in relation to the Supreme Lord. Ian, you there?
Yes, I am. What was it? What was it?
The question is, can you say something about the relationship, which is the foundation of personalism and the foundation of our, it's a relationship with God. What can you say about that? This affectionate, natural affection that the soul has for God, which is actually what he's seeking. Can you say something about that from your own realizations?
Well, we are eternal servants, and it is the duty of the servant to serve the master. And why is it said that in the material world there are limitations as to relationships, because they, it goes on for a while, but it ends for whatever reason. But our relationship with the Lord is eternal. So even when we are forgetful of the Lord, remember us, and relationship is eternal.
Good. That's beautiful. Thank you.
Osama, just
Yeah,
want to note that we're on slide 13 and there's 23.
Okay, we're gonna go fast, everybody. Okay, thank you, Ian. Now, Gopa, would you read? Oh, Madhurya Leela was gonna read. Madhurya and then Gopa.
As such, there's an unlimited flow of everlasting happiness without the fear of its being broken, as we have experienced here in the material world. The relationship with the Lord is never broken. Thus, there is no grief and no fear. Such happiness is inexplicable by words, and there can be no attempt to generate such happiness by fruitive activities, by arrangement and sacrifices. But we must also know that happiness, unbroken happiness, exchanged with the Supreme Person, the personality of Godhead, as described in this verse, transcends the impersonal conception of the Upanishads. In the Upanishads, the description is more or less negation of the material conception of things. But this is not denial of the transcendental senses of the Supreme Lord. Herein also the same is affirmed in the statement that the Supreme Lord is pure, Shuddham. The word Shuddham indicates that the senses of the personality of Godhead are not made of material elements. They are all transcendental, free from all contamination of material identification. And also the liberated souls are not devoid of senses. Otherwise, there cannot be any reciprocation of unhampered spiritual happiness exchanged between them in spontaneous, unbroken joy. All the senses, both of the Lord and of the devotees, are without material contamination.
Thank you. Thank you. We have to go on real quick, but that gives me great hope, and I hope it gives everybody great hope.
I don't want to instill a feeling of zipping through this. I was just bringing to your attention that comments on all of them are taking too much time, but we're not, I'm totally not into just quality is better than quantity. Just bringing it to your attention.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry. It's just that everything that we read is so much to, it's infinite, and it's very exciting, and I want everybody to be excited about it. But we can go on with Gopa. Are you there? She's not there. Well, she's not there. So,
no, I'm here.
She's here. Okay, Gopa Ji, could you read, please? Okay.
Srimad-Bhagavatam 2:748. In such transcendental state, there is no need of artificial control of the mind, mental speculation, or meditation as performed by the jnanis and the yogis. One gives up such process as the heavenly king Indra forgoes the trouble to dig a well. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. A poor man in want of water digs a well and undertakes the trouble of digging. Similarly, those who are poor in transcendental realization speculate on the mind or meditate by controlling the senses. But they do not know that such control of the senses and achievement of spiritual perfection are simultaneously made possible as soon as one is factually engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Supreme Person, the personality of Godhead. It is for this reason that the great liberated souls also desire to be associated in hearing and chanting the activities of the Lord. The example of Indra is very appropriate in this connection. King Indra of heaven is the controlling deity or demigod for arranging clouds and supplying rains in the universe. And as such, he does not have to take the whole trouble to dig a well for his personal water supply. For him, digging a well for water supply is simply ludicrous. Similarly, those who are factually engaged in the loving service of the Lord have attained the ultimate goal of life, and for them there is no need of mental speculation to find out the true nature of God or his activities. Nor do such devotees have to meditate upon the imagery of real identity of the Lord, because they are factually engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. The Lord's pure devotees have already achieved the results of mental speculation and meditation. The real perfection of life is therefore to be engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord.
Thank you, Gopa. Okay, can we just ask Gopa to say one little thing? Gopa, can you say one little thing about the real perfection of life?
Yeah, the last sentence there, the real perfection of life is therefore to be engaged in transcendental loving service. If you're not engaged in service, you're just not happy. Happiness comes from being engaged in transcendental loving service.
It couldn't get clearer, right? That's an instruction for all of us right there. Whatever we do, whatever we do, we must do it in the mood of transcendental loving service. And this is directly from Srila Prabhupada. So this is cool. Thank you, Gopa. Isaac, would you like to read? And then Vaishnavi. Oh, Vaishnavi just read. Atisha after Isaac. Are you there, Isaac? Maybe he went away. Okay, Tisha, could you read?
Mm-hmm.
I'm here.
Oh, you're there. Sorry. Go on.
Well, Srimad-Bhagavatam 2.7.49. Personality of Godhead is supreme master of everything auspicious, because the results of whatever actions are performed by the living being in either the material or spiritual existence are awarded by the Lord. As such, he is the ultimate benefactor. Every individual living entity is unborn, and therefore, even after the annihilation of the material elementary body, the living entity exists, exactly like the air within the body. Purport. The devotees are naturally inclined to become associates of the Lord and not merge in the spiritual existence as conceived by the impersonalists. The devotees, therefore, following their constitutional instincts, achieve the desired goal of becoming servitors, friends, fathers, mothers, or conjugal lovers of the Lord. The devotional service of the Lord involves 9 transcendental processes such as hearing and chanting, and by performing such easy and natural devotional services, the devotees achieve the highest perfectional results, far, far superior to merging into the existence of Brahman. The devotees are therefore never advised to indulge in speculating upon the nature of the Supreme or artificially meditating on the void.
Thank you, Isaac. Can you give me one? Oh, you want to go on reading?
Oh, okay, yeah, sure. Purport continued. One should not, however, mistakenly think that after the annihilation of this present body, there is no body by which one can associate with the Lord face to face. The living entity is unborn. It is not that he is manifest with the creation of material body. On the other hand, it is true that the material body develops only by the desire of the living entity. The evolution of the material body is due to the desires of the living being. According to the desires of the living being, the material body develops. So, from the spirit soul, the material body comes into existence, generated from the living force. Since the living being is eternal, he exists just like the air within the body. Air is within and without the body. Therefore, when the external covering, the material body, is vanquished, the living spark, like the air within the body, continues to exist. And by the direction of the Lord, because he is the ultimate benefactor, the living entity is at once awarded the necessary spiritual body befitting his association with the Lord in the manner of sarupa, equal bodily feature, salokya, equal facility to live on the same planet with the Lord, and sarshi, equal possession of opulence like the Lord, and samipya, equal association with the Lord.
Wait a sec. Go back real quick, Pati. One sec. Isaac, could you just answer one question?
Yes.
What does
ma'am.
what does this mean? On the other hand, it is true that the material body develops only by the desire of the living entity. Do you understand that? How do you understand that?
I would say
The
that,
evolution. Yeah, go on.
the evolution of material body is from our desires and from our hankerings. And therefore, if we give up all desires and surrender unto the Lord, we're home free.
All
Surrender and
of
service.
our material desires. We have to understand what the Lord
Material
desires. Right?
desires.
Yeah, good.
Material
right.
desires. Yes.
Good.
Thank
Home
you.
free. Thank you. That was great. Okay, we're going through it again here now. So I think Tisha, you can read, sweetie, and then
Also,
we'll have
did Karna, I see she's here.
Karna, she had asked that she wasn't going to read.
Okay, thank you.
Therefore, she's listening. Okay, Tisha.
To Srimad-Bhagavatam 2.750. My dear son, I have now explained in brief the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is creator of the manifested worlds. Without him, Hari, the Lord, there are no other causes of the phenomenal and nominal existences. Purport. There is no cause for all these phenomenal activities but him, Hari, the Supreme Lord, who is the primeval cause of all causes. This does not mean, however, that the Lord himself is distributed impersonally. He is aloof from all these interactions of the external and marginal potencies. In the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, verse 4, it is confirmed that by his potencies alone, he is present everywhere and anywhere. Everything that is manifested rests on his potency only. But he, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is always aloof from everything. The potency and the potent are simultaneously one and different from one another. One should not deprecate the Supreme Lord for the creation of this miserable world, just as one should not blame the king for creating a prison house in the government. The prison house is a necessary institution of the governmental establishment for those who are disobedient to the laws of the government. Similarly, this material world full of miseries is a temporary creation of the Lord for those who have forgotten him and are trying to lord it over the false manifestation. He, however, is always anxious to get the fallen souls back home, back to Godhead. And for this, he has given so many chances to the conditioned souls via the authoritative scriptures, his representatives, and personal incarnations also. Since he has no direct attachment to this material world, he is not to be blamed for its creation.
Thank you, dear. Should we move along, Patti, or can I ask her a little question?
There are
Okay, there's more.
six more slides, and it's been an hour. So
Oh, okay.
you.
So this is what we're going to do. Tisha, I would like you to hear very scrutinizingly, and I want to hear a question from you or an answer from you after we read. Okay?
Okay.
'Cause now we have to go on. Okay, so who is next? Oh, Faye. Faye, why don't you read next? And then after Faye, Bhadra.
Srimad-Bhagavatam 2.7.51. O Narada, the science of God, Srimad-Bhagavatam, was spoken to me in summary by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and it was spoken as the accumulation of his diverse potencies. Please expand this science yourself. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The Bhagavatam, in a nutshell, was spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead in about half a dozen verses, which will appear ahead, is the science of God, and it is the potent representation of the personality of Godhead. He, being absolute, is non-different from the science of God, Srimad-Bhagavatam. Brahmaji received the science of Godhead from the Lord directly, and he handed over the same to Narada, who, in his turn, ordered Srila Vyasadeva to expand it. So the transcendental knowledge of the Supreme Lord is not mental speculation by the mundane wranglers, but it is uncontaminated, eternal, perfect knowledge beyond the jurisdiction of the material modes. The Bhagavata Purana is therefore the direct incarnation of the Lord in the form of transcendental sound, and one should receive this transcendental knowledge from the bona fide representative of the Lord in the chain of disciplic succession, from the Lord to Brahmaji, from Brahmaji to Narada, from Narada to Vyas, from Vyasadeva to Sukadev Goswami, from Sukadev Goswami to Sutta Goswami. The ripened fruit of the Vedic tree drops from one hand to another without being broken by falling suddenly from a high branch down to the earth.
Thank you. Another ecstatic purport and direct description of the process of disciplic succession. Thank you. Bhadra, could you read next? And then Manvantar.
Text 52. Danvat. Please describe the science of Godhead with determination in a manner by which it will be quite possible for the human being to develop transcendental devotional service under the personality of Godhead, Hari, the super soul of every living being and the summum bonum, source of all energies. Purport. Srimad-Bhagavatam is the philosophy of devotional service and the scientific presentation of man's relationship with the Supreme Person of Godhead. Prior to the age of Kali, there was no need for such a book of knowledge to know the Lord and his energies. But at the beginning of age of Kali, human society gradually become influenced by the four sinful principles, namely illegitimate connection with women, intoxication, gambling, and unnecessary killing of animals. Because of these basic sinful acts, man gradually became forgetful of his eternal relationship with the Lord, with the God. Therefore, man became blind, so to speak, to his ultimate goal of life. The ultimate goal of life is not to pass a life of irresponsibility like the animals and indulge in a polished way in the four animal principles, namely eating, sleeping, fearing, and mating. For such a blind human society in the darkness of ignorance, Srimad-Bhagavatam is the torchlight to see things in proper perspective. Therefore, it was necessary to describe the science of God from the very beginning or from the very birth of the phenomenal world.
Well, because we're heading toward the end, I just want one thing, Bhadra. This
I'd
is
like to hear the rest of the purport first.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Go on, Bhadra.
As we have already explained, Srimad Bhagavatam is so scientifically presented that any sincere student of this great science will be able to understand the science of God simply by reading it with attention or simply by regularly hearing it from the bona fide speaker. Everyone is hankering after happiness in life, but in this age, the members of human society, blind as they are, do not have the proper vision that the personality of God is the reservoir of all happiness because He is the ultimate source of everything. Janmadi Asyatha. Happiness is in complete perfection without hindrance, can be achieved only by our devotional relationship with Him. And it is only by His association that we can get free of distressful material existence. Even those who are after the enjoyment of this material world can also take shelter of the great science of Srimad Bhagavatam, and they will be successful at the end. Narad is therefore requested or ordered by his spiritual master to present this science with determination and in good plan. Narad was never advised to preach the principles of Bhagavatam to each to earn a livelihood. He was ordered by his spiritual master to take the matter very seriously in a missionary spirit.
Which is very nicely displayed by Bhadra in his preaching. There's one.
You wanted him to speak on something specific?
Yeah, I seem to. Is it in the next verse or this verse where attention must be paid to the whole Bhagavatam and not going straight to the 10th canto?
I think it's coming up.
It's coming up. Okay. Do you have? That's what I really wanted to discuss. But do you have something to add to this, Bhadraji?
No, the main is the Srimad Bhagavatam is none other than Krishna, and we are doing that in your every association of devotees. So if we continue doing it, then we'll go back to Godhead.
Oh, simple! Yay! Okay, we should all be real happy. Good. Okay, then now this next verse is really important. So let's continue with that. And Manvantara, you're on.
The Lord's activities in association with his different energies should be described, appreciated, and heard in accordance with the teachings of the Supreme Lord. If this is done regularly with devotion and respect, one is sure to get out of the illusory energy of the Lord. The science of learning a subject matter seriously is different from the sentiments of fanatics. Fanatics or fools may consider the Lord's activities in relation with the external energy to be useless for them, and they may falsely claim to be higher participants in the internal energy of the Lord. But factually, the Lord's activities in relation with the external energy and the internal energy are equally good. On the other hand, those who are not completely free from the clutches of the Lord's external energy should devoutly hear regularly about the activities of the Lord in relation with the external energy. They should not foolishly jump up to the activities of the Lord's internal energy, falsely attracted by such activities as his Rasa Leela. The chief reciters of the Bhagavatam are very much enthusiastic about the activities of the Lord's internal potency, and the pseudo-devotees absorbed in material sense enjoyment falsely jump to the stage of liberated souls and thus fall down deeply into the clutches of external energy. Some of them think that they hear about the pastimes. Some of them think that to hear about the pastimes of the Lord means to hear about his activities with the gopis or about his pastimes like lifting the Govardhan hill. and they have nothing to do with the Lord's plenary expansions as the Purusa avatars and their pastimes of the creation, maintenance, or annihilation of the material worlds. But a pure devotee knows that there are no difference between the pastimes of the Lord, either in the Rasa Lila or in creation, maintenance, or destruction of the material world. Rather, the description of such activities of the Lord as the Purusa avatars are specifically meant for persons who are in the clutches of the external energy. Topics like the Rasa Leelas are meant for the liberated souls and not for the conditioned souls. The conditioned souls, therefore, must hear with appreciation and devotion the Lord's pastimes in relationship with the external energy. And such acts are as good as the hearing of Rasa Leela in the liberated stage. A conditioned soul should not imitate the activities of the liberated souls. Lord Chaitanya never indulged in hearing the Rasa Leela with ordinary men. In the Srimad-Bhagavatam, the Science of God, the first 9 cantos prepare the ground for hearing the 10th canto. This will be further explained in the last chapter of this canto. In the 3rd canto, it will be more explicit. A pure devotee of the Lord, therefore, must begin reading or hearing Srimad-Bhagavatam from the very beginning and not from the 10th canto. We have several times been requested by some so-called devotees to take up the 10th canto immediately, but we have refrained from such an action because we wish to present the Srimad-Bhagavatam as the science of Godhead and not as a sensuous understanding for the conditioned souls. This is forbidden by such authorities as Sri Brahmaji. By reading and hearing Srimad-Bhagavatam as a scientific presentation, the conditioned souls will gradually be promoted to the higher status of transcendental knowledge after being freed from the illusory energy based on sense enjoyment.
Thank you. So this, I would like to open up to everyone. Pati, maybe you can comment on it too, how this is basically why we're so excited about the 2nd canto, to understand the importance of hearing about the Lord's relationship with the material energy, because let's face it, we are in the clutches. We are all here in the material world in the clutches of the material energy. So that's a very important point. And people with looking at the 2nd canto thinking, oh my God, it's so technical. I don't know if I want to do this, but actually we can get just as much enthusiastic about this because it's about Krishna, and we get purified so that automatically we become purified enough to understand the higher aspects and relationships and pastimes of the Lord directly dealing with the internal energy. I can't hear you. Unmute.
One of the things that comes to mind as you bring that up is that Srila Prabhupada is a liberated soul, and he's writing on it. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, the 6 Goswamis, Jiva Goswami has expanded on it personally. These people are gopis in the spiritual world as well as Lord Chaitanya personal associates, and they're writing about it. So Brahmaji's writing about it. The Supreme Lord instructed him about it. So we can't say that it's not important. And as we presented last week, just a peek into the Gita Govinda of Jayadev Goswami, that poem, as the way it's written, gives us a foundation so that we can see that this information in relationship to the Supreme Lord Krishna, cowherd boy who plays a flute, becomes important. It becomes part of the relationship that will later develop into maturity and love.
That's beautiful. Tisha, you have a question or an answer?
No, I really do have a question, and I don't know. I think it's just the way my mind works, but I've always had this kind of core understanding that everything that happens in the material world, like the storm we're having or COVID or everything that happens is by the direction, not a blade of grass moves or something, it's Sri Krishna that's making it all happen. But in the verse I read, there was that part about, if I'm understanding it right, that Krishna is aloof from all of the things that are happening in the material world. So for me, this is a conflict.
Okay, so I can just give my opinion, and then others can also answer. This is the arrangement of the Lord, that the desires of the living entity will produce a certain kind of body which will facilitate them fulfilling those desires. There was a nice part in one of the purports that Prabhupada was saying that because the Lord is not attached, he's aloof, because he's not attached. So I was trying also to understand what that means. He's creating all of this because of the desires of others, but he's still supervising. He's still, just like if Prabhupada gives the example, someone has a company, he's a rich man, he's running a company. He's the top man. He doesn't know exactly maybe what's going on the floor. He's aloof because he gave the autonomy to other people. But it's still his company, and he's funding it, and he really knows everything about it. But there are certain details that he's aloof from. He allows the conditioned soul to experience their desires, and everything is geared so that they will ultimately turn their desire to be with him.
So I think I hear you saying that there's a difference between the word aloof and actually like running the whole show. Like Krishna is still in charge of everything that's happening, but he may not be reacting to everything that's happening. Like that word aloof is different from actually
attachment. Aloof and attachment are different. He's running everything, but he is aloof. He's detached from it. You know, he sees our suffering. The whole thing is created. This prison house is to help us to become reformed, but he doesn't get emotionally involved in understanding it's a temporary in someone's dream. It's a dream that the conditioned soul is identifying with matter and getting into all this trouble. And he's trying to wake the conditioned soul up. He can't, unless the conditioned soul wakes up, he won't become relieved of his problems. Does that seem a little bit clearer? Patti, can you add something?
Yeah, I wanted to refer to the first verse of the Srimad-Bhagavatam, and I'm going to put it up now. I just need to adjust this.
There it is.
Thing. Okay. O my Lord Sri Krishna, son of Vasudeva, all-pervading personality of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. I meditate upon Lord Sri Krishna because he is the absolute truth and the primeval cause of all causes of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations, and he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him. I wanted to, because the statement was made that maybe he's not personally, the question I think that's part of the question is how conscious is he of, if not a blade of grass is moving without his sanction, then how can he not be conscious of it? The greatness of God is beyond our comprehension. It's beyond our imagination even. So here it's described that he is directly and indirectly conscious, just like Samapriya was describing, that he deputes different people, like that person who owns the company has different people doing things, and he may not be conscious of every single
directly involved, conscious,
but right, simultaneously, when one devotes himself to the Lord, that relationship changes to the point where he is conscious all the time of everything that takes place. So he is directly and indirectly conscious of everything that's happening.
He's also present in everybody as a super soul, and he knows the one, everything, and directs everything as super soul too, right?
Takes contemplation and chanting a lot.
And it takes learning the science. It's vast. It's too vast. How can something that's not unlimited, how can something tiny understand the unlimited? It's just not logical. It's not practical, and it's not possible. So therefore, we can understand some things, and by hearing and surrendering to the Lord who reveals these things, then we can understand to some extent. Bhadra had something?
I have a question.
Is it regarding this particular point, or should
No.
let us finish this point up and then come back to
Okay,
that?
go ahead.
Any Tisha, anything else on this particular point?
I think that was very helpful for me to understand, just because I like to feel like I'm like surrendered, to the things that are happening that I can't control. A lot of the things that happen around me, and that's kind of like the way I handle things, I guess, is to just defer and do the best I can, always remember Krishna, but understand that these things are out of my control, things that happen in the world, in my house, everything.
Very good. That's the process. That's how we're being instructed. There are things that we'll read about it later as we go on here. Adi Daivik means daiva, daiviesha gunamayi. It's superior energy to us. It's someone else is conducting this energy.
But to give us faith and hope, we stay absorbed in the spiritual energy and cultivate our relationship with the spiritual energy, because the more detached we are from the material energy, we can develop our relationship with the spiritual energy, So it's not that you want to, you can't do anything about it, but you don't want to be cold, but that we have to become a little bit more aloof and unless we work toward becoming Krishna conscious, we will be under the material energy. So when we see things around us that are being controlled by the material energy because people are choosing not to be controlled by the spiritual energy, all we can do is pray and chant. Everybody has to live out their allotted time and karma, and hopefully come to the point of devotional service. I don't know. Yeah.
Roger?
I guess time is running out, but the question is, what is the difference between austerity and penance?
I'd have to look it up, but my initial sentiment is austerity is often something that someone does to attain some fruit. You undergo the difficulties because you have something in mind, whereas penance is the sentiment is a little bit different. It's recognizing that I've acted inappropriately, and therefore I need to atone. I need to correct myself. I need to do something to change what I'm not doing properly.
Well, also Srila Prabhupada said that we should be happy, joyful. He said this of the Gurukula children in Vrindavan, that we'd be happy to perform austerity. It should be a fun thing if you're raised from childhood to understand the an austere life. It says in the Bhagavad Gita even that one who is not austere will not understand this knowledge of the soul. Because if we don't live austerely, then we're engaging our senses and we're living on this sensual platform. If we live an austere life, which means a balanced life, eating and sleeping, mating and defending, everything balanced, and without agitating our senses, then we can understand God. But if we live in a way with uncontrolled senses and uncontrolled habits, that's not austere, right? Austerity means to give limitations to our senses, to our sensual desires. So
thank you.
That's my understanding. Anyone else have something to say? Akadasi, would you like to say something else? Or have some?
May I just make a comment?
Please.
First, I just want to thank you guys specifically for this course and for taking up your volunteer time to engages, and for even for everybody, it's hard to come together. And I know the Zoom wasn't part of your original plan for these courses. So I want to thank you so much, because you know, it's one thing when you do a thing and it's okay and it's done nicely, but when it's done all the time, the challenges, that's where the challenge is. So thank you so
thank
much
you.
for spending so much time on your Saturday to engage us all in Krishna consciousness. So
Well, I couldn't go to the yard sale today, but what the heck? This is really where it's at, to tell you the truth. I want to thank all of you for participating in this, because this is, we're creating a sangha. You know, our courses are called sadhu sangha. So this people become very, very, a very transcendental, beautiful relationship develops between people when they discuss Krishna's pastimes. And I'm hoping that this will, you know, for as long as I have energy, this will continue, and that I can be part of such a thing, and be with such wonderful, sincere people. I thank you all for that.
I also wanted to point out one feature that will come in the future for that. Here, we see that Brahma explains that this science of Godhead was spoken to him in summary. This is actually Sukadev Goswami speaking to Maharaj Pariksit and explaining about what Brahma said. But there's a book written directly by Brahma called the Brahma Samhita. And what we'll do is that book comes directly from Lord Brahma's point of view. And after we finish the second canto in June, during the month of July, we'll study this book. So I just wanted everybody to know that's something to look forward to. And finally, that brings us to the end of this chapter.
Okay.
Was there something else, Sama?
I don't know. Akadasi, were you getting ready to say something? You have to unmute.
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
Just in that 52, verse 52, I was just noticing how it's just kind of such a nice, concise explanation of what happened, you know, to us, to me, how I came to the position of just, you know, how becoming influenced by four sinful principles, and then that how that these sinful acts leads to the forgetfulness of one's eternal relation with God. And yeah, and just also, yeah, I'd like to echo Manvantara's sentiments in just being grateful to you all for having these classes and for continuing. And yeah, and of course, grateful to Prabhupada for giving us this literature by which we can get out of get out of the ignorance that I'm in.
I think you're pretty safe saying us, because here we are, us in the material world, but with great hope. Okay?
Bye, everyone.
Thank you all very much. Hare Krishna.
Panchakalpatubhishcha kripa sindhubhyo patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.